left, right.
America is broken. How are we going to fix it? This is part 2 in a series. Today we're talking about welfare. What's wrong with the welfare system? How are we going to fix it? Let me know what you think in the comments. And let me know what you think after listening to this episode of our opinions on the topic. See you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course it's Phil.
Cheers.
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 All right, sounds like we are live. Welcome to Sip Talk, episode 202. My name is Justin DiGiulio, out of my basement in New Jersey, joined as always by James, the Bosnator Boswell, philosopher, retired professional referee, bartender, most exciting of all, accountant. Tonight, we're joined by Larry Holter, who's got 10 years plus in the real estate business. He owns multiple businesses out of Texas, and he is a Texan living here in New York City at the current moment. How's it hanging, guys?
I feel like we should do an entire episode of What's Wrong with America, Texas.
I feel like we'd never end. But back to you, Justin. We're doing pretty good. I mean, I'm doing great. I'm sure
Well,
James.
Yeah, things are good here.
I got to ask you guys right off the bat, because this is Sip Talk and I'm dying for a drink. James, you're in my top right corner. What are you drinking tonight?
Bush Ice.
Oh, very nice.
Got to
Larry-
tighten the belt a little bit, and the mortgage industry is bad enough that like my hours are temporarily cut. So, if there's a cheaper beer than Bush Ice, let me know.
Natural Light, maybe. I think you might have.
Yeah, but like I'm thinking of like $1 per ounce of alcohol.
And
This
Larry,
is 5.9, and Natural Light might be like 3.2 or something.
So you get less alcohol for the buck. I got you. Larry, can I ask you, what are you drinking?
Yeah, so tonight I'm having a vodka with actual cranberry juice, not cranberry, whatever I had last time. I don't remember. What was that?
Cranberry ginger ale.
Ginger ale. There you go. Yes.
That was an odd mix.
Cranberry ginger ale and
good.
gin is really nice, actually.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's true.
So before we get into any more about what we're drinking, or before we actually get into deep into the topic here, tonight we're talking about welfare. So this is our series on how we can fix the United States. I think it's really just an hour of us talking about all the problems the United States has. Hopefully we'll get to some potential solutions. I don't know about you guys. I drank a lot last episode. I probably drank more than I should have. How about you, Larry?
Actually, I had one drink all night, but it was enough.
All right. And James, you were going for a run afterwards. Was that the case?
Bike ride.
You going for a
just
bicycle?
Got my brand new bike, and I wanted to take it out, put it through its paces.
And you've got James got a nice bike. I've given up bicycling for the time being. I'd love to get back into it. James, while I'm pouring my drink here, you want to tell us real quick about your bicycle?
Real quick, I want to hit the comments. We got Jorge joining us with a Corona right now. Got to say hi to Debbie Ferry, and Lisa's joining us, one of our loyals.
All right, that's good. So I'm glad to see you guys live. I haven't seen a couple of you guys in a little while, so I'm glad you could join us tonight. We're talking about welfare, so I would love input from you guys on how to fix welfare, what's broken with welfare, or maybe you don't think it's broken. I'd love that opinion too. James, real quick, just tell us the high points in this bicycle, because Larry, this is an impressive bicycle.
Custom order. It's painted in like the Gulf livery colors. If you think of the like the 70s racing cars of the blue and orange, it says "Get off my lawn" on it. It's fully electronic shifting with disc brakes, all carbon fiber. It's really fun.
Disc brakes apparently they've been around for a while on bicycles. I didn't know that. That blew my mind. And then it's got electronic shifting, which is not,
Yeah, so no cables are driving like the front and rear derailleurs. I just press a button on the shifters and a motor shift. So like No more missed shifts, no more like half shifts or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
basically every time it works exactly the way it's supposed to.
Man,
So-
and you know what? And this sounds like why we're drinking that light beer right there. I mean, how was that? Was that on the higher end?
Well, the bike,
Yeah, the bike.
yeah, it's near the top end of what you can buy.
you've
There
been
you go.
saving your SSI checks to buy this bike, right?
Oh yeah. All the Medicare business that I've been running out of the back has been paying for it. Really.
Now this bike costs as much as a small new car.
No,
Maybe not a new
but you
car.
could get a pretty good used car for the price of this bike.
Yeah, no, it's pretty impressive. So look, I want to talk about welfare. I so I did a little research on welfare. We got to get into it. Sorry to pivot there, but it's my
For the next
understanding-
podcast, I'll put the bike in the background.
Love it.
Very nice. So it's my understanding there's kind of 4 basic types of welfare. I don't know much about welfare, so I'm really new to this game. Just started doing some research to really get a good understanding of
All right. So what are the 4 types?
what it is. But you've got income assistance, you've got housing, you've got medical, and then you have food.
Okay.
Am I missing anything, or does that sound like it sums it up?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right.
Because the research that I was doing was I did a lot of research on fraud incidents in the various programs, and I wanted to see like which programs are more prone to fraud, and then I also compared the fraud incidents of those programs against the fraud incidents of the PPP program.
Okay.
Because a lot of the criticisms of welfare programs are that they're wasteful or inefficient, or that people are taking advantage of them, and I wanted to see how the numbers actually stacked up.
So where should we start? Because I have a question, but I'm curious if you guys have a starting point on this.
I want to start off by saying, like, I think the general question of why should we have welfare? We need to
Sure.
address that
okay.
before we talk about any of the programs. We need to say, why
Good.
should we have these in the first place?
So that's in line with my question where I thought we would start is how do you qualify and why would you qualify for welfare?
Well,
So-
let's get there, but first you need to say, why should we even have these in the first place?
Okay, and why should we be giving free money to people who aren't earning it?
Okay, so first things first is, the system hasn't been around, or at least this system has not been around to Americans since the beginning. This is something that was, established in 1935 by President Roosevelt. And it
You're talking about Social Security?
Social Security. And it first started off as a Social Security assistance program that later grew into the other programs. Now, it's grown over time, and the participants have definitely grown. I think that when it first started, what was it like? There were just a few people. I didn't actually write that statistic down, but I know that I should have. But now I want to say it was about 12 million people that were in that program when it first started. And
Well,
now we're upwards of about 59.
Well, first of all, why was Social Security created? Before we talk about the details, let's ask why.
Okay.
Like why did we create Social Security? Why did we create Medicare? Why did we put it on the government to provide social welfare programs to certain people? Why would we do that?
So that's a good question. And from what I've read and doing my research, it was started because of a minimum wage problem, an unemployment problem. There were a lot of individuals that were going through unemployment issues and they needed the assistance, which of course the program hasn't changed much. Now it's gotten even larger, but a lot of it is poverty lined where we're at now.
So would this have been shortly after the Great Depression?
The Great Depression was the kind of impetus for this. Other countries had probably done social welfare before this, but in our country, it was the Great Depression that really pushed us towards having like socialized public welfare programs, and the reason for it was a really bad look to have hundreds of thousands or millions of people unable to feed themselves, unable to house themselves, and the progressives saw this as a failure of government as much as it was a failure of personal nature, and they said we should have a system where the government will help people who have fallen on hard times so that when they're able to turn themselves around, like they didn't die before they had the opportunity to, because they couldn't afford food or they couldn't afford a house or something like that, or they couldn't afford to the absolute basics. And so they
Well,
said it's
it,
government's job to step in when people do not have the means to be able to help themselves.
yeah, I mean, and if you're a country, a powerhouse of a country, and you're going to say, hey, we're one of the top producing countries, we're one of the world powers, but then you have so many in your population that are starving and are sick and are unable to feed themselves. That's not a good look. So, I think from that perspective alone, if you have India, where you have people who are starving on the streets and dying on the streets, but India is not walking around saying we're one of the world powers. So, I think from the government perspective, taking care of the people, irregardless of the cause,
Yeah, and
personal
I
responsibility.
think there's also kind of a recognition that there that in any system there's going to be some amount of people that are never going to be able to take care of themselves, and you can think about people that like mental handicaps or like kind of crushing physical handicaps where it's utterly unrealistic to expect them to be able to take care of themselves, like be completely self-sufficient. And so there are government programs designed to help those people in particular, because otherwise they would just they would die because they just can't take care of themselves no matter how motivated they may be to do so.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, James. And I actually have experience with that in one of my family members who actually, two of my family members that receive that type of assistance.
And so the question, I think, when you get to the political aspect of this, like you're going to have some probably on the extreme right, you're going to have people that say we shouldn't have any social programs whatsoever. People should be able, people can will sink or swim on their own merits. And for the people that are truly disadvantaged, like mentally handicapped or physically handicapped, that's why there are private charities, and it's we will let the private market fix this, and private charities such as perhaps churches will be able to step in and meet the demand of the people that can't help themselves, and it's not government's business to weigh in. I don't think that that is an opinion that is popular enough to really consider and rebut. I think
No, but
that
that's the extreme end of it.
right.
The
And
extreme
so
end of it would be that perspective.
I think when you come to the political discussion, I think most people in this country, probably the vast majority, agree that the government should be doing something. And where the argument lies is how much should they be doing? How do you qualify? And who gets these benefits? And that's where all the fighting is how are these programs actually administered? We don't have much of an issue with the program's existence, but
Okay,
we might have an issue with how the program is administered.
so then who's getting the assistance? Because one of the videos I watched, they said somebody who's fit, of working age, who's an adult, doesn't have any children, doesn't have any health issues, they're kind of shit out of luck when it comes to getting some type of public assistance.
Well, for somebody like any of the three of us, chances are pretty good that none of us would qualify for any of these things, because if you don't qualify on a health basis, there are some programs that you qualify on an age basis, such as Medicare and Social Security, but the others are going to be income based. And there's a couple different income qualifications depending on what program you're looking at, but basically to qualify for the income ones, you've got to be within a certain range of the poverty line or below and have a certain amount of assets or below, or you don't qualify.
Well, speaking of Medicare, I did not realize this until my research today, is that Medicare and Medicaid are different, and that Medicare is primarily for people that are over 65, whereas Medicaid is for low-income people.
That's true.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I figured I would share it because the two words I've used interchangeably. I just realized that they're
they're completely separate programs.
Correct.
And one of the things that really grinds me is when you have old people talking about how voting against any kind of socialized medicine in this country, and then you ask them, well, do you use Medicare? And they say, yeah, of course, like it's the cheapest insurance, it's got the best benefits for me. Be like, who's paying for that? So they don't seem to realize that they're the ones benefiting from socialized medicine. They're just shutting the door on people that are below the age.
Okay, so
I think that's just my personal rant on old people voting against socialized medicine.
So look,
Okay, and just
Go
to clarify, Medicare is a federal program and Medicaid is a state program.
Yes, but the federal government kicks in money towards the states to support the Medicaid
Correct.
program.
Yeah,
that's the case with many state programs, though.
Yeah, but it's not like it's Medicaid is paid 100% by the states.
All right, so I still feel like we're struggling to take direction in this conversation, and I don't.
We're first we have to establish why were these programs created, what was their goal, then you have to say, okay, what were some of the objections? And so I talked about the extreme right and just saying like, here's the objections from like the libertarian or anarcho-capitalist people, and why we're not really going to talk about those because they're not popular enough opinions to really sway public policy.
Can we talk about the opposite end of that spectrum?
Yes, we can.
The very liberal end, where liberal typically would mean like civil liberties and things like that, but more and more it's meaning just kind of the freedom to spend every working people's money on those who don't have any money.
Well, I would say the extreme end of the liberal side would be something resembling communism.
Yeah, which isn't, but and that's where I think we've kind of shifted with being liberal. Like liberal typically meant civil liberties, and now it means socialism, right? And that is socialism, right?
Liberalism, you have to look at the left versus the right. They're like to try and break it down as much as possible. Like at the extreme ends of the left and the right, you'll have on the right basically wanting no government whatsoever, and on the left would be total government control of everything. If you have to boil it down,
I think, but I don't know. I necessarily agree with that, though. I feel like on the right they're very constitutional. Not quite anti-government. I think that might have been the.
No, what I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the absolute extremes of the political spectrum. I'm not talking about like on a 1 to 100 scale. I'm talking about 0 and 100, not 75 and 25.
So there's no gray line here. It's either this or it's that, an anarchist or.
Yeah, I'm talking about if you go to 0 or 100, you're going to end up with someone who's like 100% communist. The government is in control of literally every aspect of your life. And on the extreme far right, it would be there is no government.
Okay, so now, on the extreme liberal end, how does that play out when it comes to Medicare? Because you just said when on the right side, it means the government's not giving anything. If they die, they die. If they're sick, they're sick. Private companies can step in, but that's not something we're going to enforce with government. So what's the
left side? You would have the government, the government would be providing everything to you based on what the government decides you need, and your job will be determined by the government. Your pay will be determined by the government. Your benefits, all the things that you want to do in life, government will be deciding what you get.
Well, okay, so let's take a step in the direction of housing then, because I feel like when it comes to public housing, that's something that, I've been in New York State, New York City specific real estate for a long time now. And I'm seeing the laws that are coming through where the government is very much hands-on with the real estate market. Lots of public housing in New York City, lots of low-income housing in New York City, and lots of laws that supplement housing. So, and it doesn't look good. You look at pure public housing, which we call the projects, although, I'm careful in using the word projects, even in the office, because it has a bad connotation. But the projects implies subpar housing, which is usually, very crime ridden, full of mold, leaking water. Public housing is not good in New York City. Nobody says, that would be a good place for me. I want to live in the projects. That's not an ideal, but that is pure government run housing. Am I wrong on this?
Depends on is it 100% government owned, or is it private but subsidized by the government in some way?
I'm talking about the projects, which is NYCHA, which is New York State Housing Authority.
Right. So I don't know much about this topic, so I'm asking a genuine question here, which is
I
that
think New York
land
State,
and
I
that
think New York
building and
State,
everything else, who owns that? Is it
I
the
think
state
New
that
York
owns
State,
that?
yes, I believe New York State owns and manages it. Versus when a developer builds a building and to get whatever tax breaks, or even to get
Like
the
approval.
permits to build the building, they have to have 30% or 20% of the building that is low income housing or median income housing.
Right. So all right. So I wanted to clarify: is this 100% government owned? And you're saying it is.
As to my knowledge, I don't.
Okay.
Again, I make a lot of corrections after these podcasts, but as far as I'm concerned, but it's not good. And I was trying to figure out why housing sucks so much when it comes from the government. And I know many people. I mean, I've shown apartments for over a decade. You walk by the projects and you have a client who's paying, who's earning money and is paying rent. They get physically uncomfortable. I can't rent apartments near the projects unless we walk to the building from a different location.
Well, so my answer as to why is public housing bad in New York City would be it probably isn't funded.
Well, I mean, it's from New York State, so.
Right. And what I'm saying is that the state is not giving it enough funding for it to be good.
But
I think that what makes up these type of buildings and developments is very basic, minimal developments itself. You've got your four walls, you've got a roof, you've got a floor, you got a basic stove, basic little refrigerator. Nothing, nothing there is meant for you to fall in love with it. And it, unfortunately, the individuals that move in there really do need that assistance, and that's all that they can qualify for. But the government isn't going to go in there and say, hey, let me tile up this place and let me put these beautiful backsplashes and all the things that we typically are used to seeing.
They have to pass approval, right? So there's an inspector that goes in.
They're going to pass approval through the state, right? You're talking about the state passing approval through the state. Don't you think that would be a lot easier than me as an independent contractor trying to get permits to build a condo unit, and the state's going to go in there and say, "Oh, the electrical and the blah and this is not approved."
I think I would bet you. Well, one, those buildings usually start out. I imagine new construction. It's probably okay. Now it probably costs the government who's footing the bill way too much money. Just like anything else the government does. The government wants to build a highway or a bridge and it's going to cost $5 million. They're going to do it in 2 years. 6 years later, it costs, $14 million or, whatever the case may be. I imagine public housing, building it is just like that. My thinking, though, is that it's given for the most part for very low rent. A lot of these people do have to pay rent, but once you're in, you're in. So if you get a job from then you start making money, the law, you can't be evicted, right? They can raise your rent a little bit, but the laws, if you moved in, it was $800 and you've been there for 30 years. it's probably $1,126, right? And even though it's a 3-bedroom apartment and the 3-bedroom apartments down the block are going for $7,000, you're paying $1,126. Now you may be making more money, but you're not getting evicted. So getting in is very difficult. There's very low supply. Once you're in, you're in. That's one of the issues with housing. And I don't know how I feel about evicting people once they get a job and start making money. I don't think that's the right thing to do. But
how is it not the right thing, though? This program was not meant to be perpetual. It was not meant to last forever. You get the assistance when you need it, and then you get out when you don't need it and give that opportunity to somebody that really needs it.
Okay, so
how would you not feel comfortable?
So that person gets a job, right? Maybe they weren't working, or maybe they were earning minimum wage when they moved in. Then they get a job, so they move. So they move out, and then they lose their job, and then it's going to take them 4 years to find another apartment.
Okay, so let me point out two things.
So you want to do this? This isn't a trial and error.
Well, that's so the issue with a lot of, and I want to stand housing, but the issue with a lot of these programs, and I think you guys will agree, and Larry, maybe a little later we can talk about some of our background, but when you start making money, you start losing some of these programs. So there are some people who won't take the raise or won't put in the extra hours because that's going to tip them over the scale, and they may lose it. Somebody taking a new job, which is tentative, and in New York State, you can lose your job in the first 90 days, and the employer doesn't have to give you a reason. But then getting back on the programs is very difficult. James, I
want to point out one thing that doesn't make sense to me in what you've said about public housing, because in one sentence you say these places are crappy to live in crappy neighborhoods and poorly maintained, but in another sentence,
I didn't say crappy neighborhoods. I didn't say crappy neighborhoods, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll take back the crappy neighborhoods, but these places are crappy to live in and crappily maintained. Mm-hmm. So you say that, and then in another sentence you say the demand for these places is very high and the supply is low, so people that get public housing will not give it up. So which is it? Does it suck, or is it something that once you get, you never want to lose?
Well, so that's the thing about it. It does suck, but once you get it, you don't want to lose it. So it's actually both.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Hang on. Look,
because these two things don't square in my mind.
Okay, so look, here's the issue. You said let's go 10, 15 years from now. Larry, you have kids?
I do.
Larry, okay, so
I've got a 20-year-old son and I've got a 17-year-old daughter. Yeah.
All right, so I want to 17. You said 17?
Yeah, my daughter's 17. Yeah, she'll be 18 next month. Yes.
So you may get this. It's a thought, but bear with me here. So you got a 16-year-old kid, just turned 16, just got their permit. You buy them a brand new car. Now, it's not a great car. Let's say it's a 2023 Toyota. What's a low end Toyota?
Corolla.
Corolla. Okay. You
buy your kid, which I just bought my daughter.
Okay. All right. Cool. Beautiful. Perfect. All right. Actually, this may really ring. Okay. So you buy her this. Now she doesn't have a job yet because she can't get to and from her job, obviously. So how's she going to have a job? So now she's got the car. All right. Now you buy her the car. You pay cash for the car. Okay. But you're not paying her insurance. All right. You're not giving her money for gas, and you're not going to help her maintain the car. Okay. Now, how's she going to get this job? She can't afford gas to and from the job, right? Right. So maybe her if she does get the job, her paycheck's not coming until 2 or 3 weeks in. At that point, she's already lost the job, right? Because she can't afford to get to and from the job.
I think this is a pretty poor analogy.
Hear me out. But you got her a brand new car.
I see where you're going.
Let me ask you. Okay. Yeah. 6 months later, what's that car doing? Sitting in the driveway. All right. Sitting in the driveway. Now you allow her to get a job, but she can only get a job where she's working 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Okay. How's that going to work? Is she go to school? Does she go to school?
Does my daughter go to school? Yeah, she's graduating in December early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could she take a job right now, 9 to 4 p.m.?
Well, she worked at my business, but I mean, yeah, she could
Okay,
take
so
a
if her
job if she
father,
wants
if her
one.
father didn't own a business and she went to school
Right, so
full time.
she can't get a job because she's in school. Keep going.
Okay, so it's a year
Yeah,
later.
yeah, we get
It's
this.
a year later. It's a
Yeah.
year later. All right. How's that car look?
I don't know. I mean,
Well, she can't work. She can't maintain it. She can't pay for gas. She's got an asset which was given to her. How do
I
people?
reject some of the premises in this argument.
Okay, fine, but how do people?
yeah,
How do
me
people
too.
treat things that were given to them as well as they had earned them?
So I'm gonna have to take myself out of the concept because everything that you've said, I actually do. I pay for the insurance, the gas. I sell her,
Okay,
whatever.
hear me out.
So now I
Let me
have to
paint the
think. I
picture.
have to think
Wait.
like
Let me
the
paint the picture,
other
and then
demographic that you're
okay.
trying to say. But
Let me
the
paint my
analogy
picture.
that
There,
you've been
Yeah, the thing is, some of
absolutely
your brushstrokes
sucks.
are wrong because if you get a free car, you're gonna nobody has $0, so
All right.
you're gonna have enough
Hang on.
money for
Let me
that
paint my
first tank
picture.
of gas to get to work.
Now let me paint my picture. All right. You're 16 years old.
Yeah.
You're given a car. You're stipulated that you can't work. You don't have any money. Okay. And you you can't get a job because the hours that are offered to you just don't work with your life. Right. You either quit high school and take the job, or you go to high school and can't work the hours. Nobody's paying for your gas. Nobody's paying for the insurance. So you can't drive it anyways. And you don't have the money to pay the sales tax to register the car. So my question to you is, how does that car look 6 months later, a year later, 18 months later? Fuck that car. Okay. So you get an apartment where you can't furnish it very well. Okay. And even though it was given to you and you weren't given any furniture and you're bringing in furniture, you can barely pay for the electricity. You can't pay for cable because you barely have a job. Right. And maybe you got to take care of somebody who lives in the home. You're because whatever their health issues are. How's that apartment going to look? Even though it might have been nice, fresh paint, new appliances, how's that apartment going to look when you can't afford to furnish the apartment very well? Even though it was given to you, fuck that apartment.
All right, so
And
your analogy was terrible,
there's a
but
level of resentment. There's a level of resentment, I would think, that would go towards the apartment itself because it was given to you, but it wasn't given to you with the supporting measures and basically making it impossible for you to treat that apartment or treat that vehicle the way that you'd like to.
Well, listen, I think that
my
when you're in a
take.
position to be, gotcha. I think that when you're in a position that you need the assistance, you shouldn't be asking or looking for anything much more better than that roof over your head if that's what it is that you need at that moment in time. I also don't think that this program should have a never-ending stipulation. And I know where you're getting at. I have a lot of friends up on some of the northern parts of New York that have been in those apartments for years, 30 years. And it started with mom who first came in and then the daughters. And you know what? As long as the family is still within the family, we get to keep that apartment for $1,000. So they're not complaining. You've got families and families living in those 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom apartments, and nobody's complaining about paying $1,000 while the rest of the
what I was going to say is they may be they might have lower rent or low income housing where they're locked into, but they're making the bet. And I have friends, I know a lot of people that live in low income or they've gotten rent stabilized apartments. They take very good care of. But but when we're talking about the project and you're living for free, what I'm saying is you may not take as great of care, and there might be a level of resentment because actually I took notes on this when I was thinking about this idea about something being given to you and not caring for it was the reciprocity principle, right? If I do something for you, if I take you out to lunch, you then feel indebted to me. And I could be wrong on this, but when things are given to you from the government, so if I take you out to lunch, you're gonna be like, oh, I got to do something for Justin. I'm gonna bring him a bottle of wine or a case of beer or something like that. He took me out to lunch. There's a level of indebtedness. Now, I could be off on this, but my thinking is when things are given to you from the government, there's no conceivable way for you to do anything or give anything back. It's all take, and there's very little opportunity to give outside of taxpayer dollars.
But that is the mechanism.
But I think there might
that
be.
is the mechanism. Like that's why you pay taxes, is to support programs. And like if you're receiving benefits from one government program or another, then you can look at it as your reciprocal part is that you pay your taxes.
Well, let me ask you a question. If you think you have a housing project where there's a community garden, do you think those people who participate in the community garden are going to treat their apartments more nicely than the people who, don't participate in the community garden?
Well, this is a rhetorical question. Do people care about the community that they live in, take better care of their community?
Right. That's just my complaints about housing, and yeah, not being forced to move out of the housing. Right. It's not like a lot of the other programs like Medicaid or so SSI. I thought stood for Social Security income. It stands for Supplemental Security Income. But people who get SSI, after they earn a certain amount, they don't get as much money. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So hold on. I want to talk about this because since we're talking about housing assistance, so I've got a welfare fraud and improper payments table, which gives like the amount in spending and the amount of improper payments in like a percentage. So guess what the fraud incidence rate is in housing assistance programs in a percentage?
Oh, 12? Larry, any guess?
I was gonna say 10.
Okay.
0.
How does that work?
Well, according to this table, like so for comparison, Medicaid has an incident rate of 21.7% of fraud and improper payments. So housing assistance has a 0% fraud rate.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's difficult, I would think, to commit any type of fraud if you're going to need to live in a place. I think that you've got to, obviously, in everything, you should be showing your income. But if that's all that you can afford, you're going to go in, you're going to live in it, you're not going to take advantage of it, except for the individuals that you have moving in there and staying in there with you. Maybe you rent it out to them. Who knows? The bigger fraud is going to come from SNAP, food stamps, people claiming food stamp fraud. I think that's the largest one.
Nope.
More so than,
you know what SNAP's
Medicaid?
incidence rate is?
What is it?
So SNAP 7.4%.
Wow.
I want to address a quick comment.
What site is this?
Yeah,
I'll share all my links.
Yeah, share the link. I got a comment on TikTok here that says Zoopy10. Justin, have you always been this conservative? And the thing is, I don't feel that conservative, except I'm definitely pushing back. I think I'm just getting upset with the far left liberals, which are the vast majority and the loudest of the liberals. I think I'm getting really upset with that. I mean, I'm just talking about housing. I think, to get back to housing real quick and defend my liberal roots, I think there's a really good place for low-income housing and subsidized housing. The issue is it just sucks so much. We have so many clients who come to us with housing programs and vouchers, and it's so difficult to find them apartments. And landlords who own properties have so many horror stories from people who came in with, and I have family that does only Section 8 housing. So I'm personally very familiar with it, but I also belong to a lot of landlord groups, and they have many issues. There's a lot of horror stories that go along with the Section 8 and the vouchers and the programs. So I see that perspective. I see that side of it, but that's the vast majority of it isn't all negative. It isn't people taking advantage of the system. It isn't people trashing the apartments, but it still is a very difficult thing for people to do. And, getting approved with a housing voucher or on some program is almost impossible at this point. I think I tell people we've taken between 50 and 60 applications this year for people who have housing programs, and we've closed maybe 4. And that's more than anybody else I know. So, but closing 4 deals out of 50 applications is a very, very low rate. And we try very hard for these people. It's just a lot of landlords don't want them. The programs themselves are basically impossible. They ask the landlord before they want to do anything on their end. They ask the landlord to just send them the lease, but the landlord doesn't even have any information on that person or the program or whether they're even qualified. And we kind of hit this this impasse where the program wants the lease and the landlord wants information about the program and the tenant before they send the lease. And
So
we kind of
this
hit these
sounds
dead ends.
less a problem that you have with the programs themselves than with the red tape and inefficiencies in administration, where the program could be better run, and if it were better run, then it would be more successful. And me, as I guess the liberal on this cast, is going to say we need to be putting more money towards it, because if we put more money towards these programs, then they will be better run. You increase oversight, increase funding, and increase expectations of the people that are running the programs. And these things don't have to be terrible. The reason why they're terrible is because we're not funding them.
But I think we're spending too much money on a lot of these programs, and it's being poorly allocated.
If there's no way that we're spending too much money if you're getting these poor results.
Well, I mean, a lot of these programs spend an awful lot of money, in my opinion. They just upped the payment standards for the housing vouchers, and it hasn't made it any easier for people to find apartments. All right, and we have a comment on YouTube from Sasha saying the people in project buildings here in New York City are usually very ghetto and not pleasant to live around. And I mean, that's I don't know, what would you call it? Very kind of discriminatory comment, but that's how most people I find feel. When I say projects, people are like, oh, I don't even say projects because it's just got a bad connotation. And when I bring clients, yesterday I showed a beautiful doorman building, but it had a view of the projects. And I walked inside and my client didn't like it. And we're looking at, there are these giant windows that were 8 feet wide and probably 6 feet tall in the living room and the bedroom. And it just looked onto the projects. And, this particular projects were under construction. And it looked like a crime scene. It looked bad. And I'm sure that it's been under construction for the last 3 years. And it will probably continue to have all this construction material up for the next 2 years. So it was just bad all the way around.
So I would say, why not increase oversight and look for waste? And I think if you haven't worked in government or known someone who works in government, pretty much everybody, I've never worked directly in government myself, but I've talked with lots of people who have. And anybody who works in government can tell you about the person in their office that's been there for 30 or 35 years and doesn't do anything.
Well, look, we have a border czar who hadn't been to the border as of our last conversation. What about a housing czar who handles this stuff?
Who doesn't live in a house.
But who goes and visits. I remember there was somebody who went to stay at some nice apartments and literally was like, yeah, I can't do this. I'm out. It was not the governor, but it was somebody on whatever, that they had appointed to whatever position. And this was probably 6 to 8 years ago.
Right. So that's when you bring in the head of the administration and you say, what the hell are you doing? And
well, I thought that's what was going to happen. And then literally nothing changed.
Right. So you need to have accountability for these things. And if we're not going to hold people accountable, then you're going to get shit results. This is obvious, people.
So I got a comment here on TikTok that says we have a serious lack of affordability in housing. No, this is not the comment I was looking for. I would say there is more fraud in disability. I know a ton of white middle class people taking advantage. Is disability something?
Disability is not really a government program so much. The only there's Social Security survivors and disability benefits, but I don't have stats on that. But most disability is going to be handled through private insurance claims, and I don't have the stats on that because I didn't research
under
it.
The umbrella.
Go ahead, Larry.
Disability is also the umbrella of the SSI.
Okay, so I do have stats on SSI.
Disability is also
So
right.
the SSI improper payment incidence rate is 10%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I just
So,
run down these numbers,
Go ahead, Larry. Larry, I think you got a
Yeah.
slight lag, so when you got to say something, just go with it because I feel like we keep cutting you off. I'm really curious what you're about to say.
No, well, basically what I was going to say is earlier I had mentioned, that I've got two family members that are on SSI, and they're both, mentally impaired in terms of learning disability and then just even daily social living skills, you name it. Both of them one is my half brother, one is my half sister. So they receive these monthly dividends. They're not supposed to be working because obviously they can't make those proper decisions on what to do. But a lot of that goes towards a lot of drinking. A lot of that money goes towards, somebody is supposed to be in charge of their income. One of my brothers asked me, or my brother asked me, hey, I'm gonna put you in charge of taking care of my monthly stipend. I said, absolutely not. I want nothing to do with that stipend. I want nothing to do with your daily living choices. That's all on you, buddy. So, and I don't have a problem saying I was a foster kid, so I'm not exactly entirely close to my family whatsoever, which is another reason that I just don't want to have anything to do with any of that stuff. But I do realize that there is fraud in it because sometimes you've got people that pass away and those checks keep coming in. Nobody reports the passing. Those checks just get deposited, and your mothers or whoever go and pull out that money using it until whoever. So that disability, fraud does exist.
right, and it does. According to my numbers, at about a 10% rate.
Is in the school districts. Yeah.
Okay. What about the school district, Larry? You get a little lag. Your reception went down quite a bit. Did you change something with your Wi-Fi? Start downloading something? I don't know what happened on your end. This is the internet age where we're all on Zoom, and somehow you just flipped back to 1998 there.
I'm lagging, right?
A little bit, but actually you look good now.
Rosh says,
why is it every time I've got something to say? I was going to say, why is it every time I've got something to say, I lag?
I don't know. All right. Well, when it comes to, I want to touch on something that you talked about like your family members that are getting these SSI payments and how they're putting it towards alcohol, right?
Right.
So my view on that is, who cares? Like if you're receiving these benefits and you qualify for the program and that's what you choose to put the money towards, that's not a flaw in the program. The program is giving you this money. Just because you choose to spend it poorly does not mean that the program is wrong. And if you have someone that's disabled, like if you're not disabled to the point where you need to basically have a guardian where someone has power of attorney over pretty much everything you do, well, then the question would be, should you even qualify for this program? Or we don't care what you do with the money. You get to make the decisions with your money, and if you choose to spend that money on alcohol, so be it. But if you have someone that has a power of attorney over you, and you're still spending money on the alcohol, then you need to look at the person who has the power of attorney and say, "Hey, you should be doing a better job taking care of this person because it's your legal responsibility to do so."
Look, so I don't think necessarily we've currently identified anything that needs severe fixing with welfare. What
the whole program needs severe fixing.
I said housing. But James, didn't really seem to think there was much of a fix to it.
No, I'm not saying that the programs don't need to be fixed. I'm saying that your proposed solutions of funding them less are going to lead to worse results.
Well, no, I think we need somebody who is very hands-on, looking at what needs to be fixed with these buildings? We're being like spammed really hard right now, I feel like, on YouTube. But I think we need to, we send somebody down there to like spend the night or spend the week or spend the month or just live there for good. Right? Say, hey, you get to live for free, but you get to live here. Make it into what you want it to be. And while you're doing so, make that across the platform. You live in this public housing complex, the public housing complex 10 blocks up, 40 blocks north, 60 blocks south. We're going to do the same across the board. But
All right.
your
So hold
budget,
on. I think we've identified. So what
And
you're
that's
saying is that, like with housing, for example, that it's poorly administered, and the people that are in charge don't seem to care. So the first solution is you need to have government accountability. You need to have a governor or whoever oversees that agency be held accountable and say, your agency should be doing this. You suck at this. We're going to find somebody new. You're out of a job. And keep on repeating that process until you find somebody that does a good job.
Well,
And
how does that happen? Because the taxpayers and the voters who are taxpayers don't seem that concerned with this, and probably because they don't see it.
right. But
So how do we
you're asking for the solutions. I'm telling you that if you're
well, we
running
got
New
to
York
put that
State
first.
government or you're the New York City mayor, whoever is in charge of this agency, you bring that person in and say, you've got 6 months to make meaningful progress in these areas, and if you don't, you're fired. And when it comes to like, so you have to look at fraud in terms of like this welfare fraud and improper payments table. You have to look at it in terms of, is it abuse of the system? So people like that are getting like SSI survivors benefits, and like, or like the person who's getting the benefits dies and the people don't notify the government that like they should stop receiving the payments. Like, so that's going to be abuse. But then you've got fraud. So you could have like, and you see this mostly in the medical area for Medicare and Medicaid, with providers creating fake invoices for fake patients to get payments on various programs. And then you've just got waste where the programs are just not well administered. And so what I would say that the solution to kind of all three of those is you establish a whistleblower program where if you're aware of something that's going on, so let's say we'll stick with the medical area. So let's say you work in a medical office and you're the person doing the billing, and the doctor, whoever owns this medical office, is improperly billing Medicare or Medicaid, and let's say it's $1 million a year. Like, you have a whistleblower rewards program where you say, if you blow the whistle on this and we successfully prosecute this case and like we recover, let's say we recover that $1 million, a certain percentage goes to the whistleblower. I don't know, 10%, 20%. You pick a number and you say, if you blow the whistle and we recover money as a result of a fraud investigation, we will pay you a reward. And you could have that also in the government, where you could have people that are, if you know that there are government employees that are ignoring fraud and abuse, if you blow the whistle on them, same thing. Money that's recovered, you get a percentage. Incentivize the right actions. And there's no simpler incentive than monetary reward.
Well, how do we make that happen?
I just told you.
Exists in
But
Texas.
well, with abortion.
Rosh says people will whistleblow abusively and a lot of offices will get raided for nothing. Well, the thing is, you're not going to have an incentive to blow the whistle if you don't think that you have a reasonable chance of success.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm curious where Larry was going with that. Already happens a lot in Texas. We gotta give him a second here to catch up.
And I'm looking at this table to look.
Yeah, so we're playing, and other physicians have actually been arrested.
Sounds like we're back to the bad audio quality here on Larry's end. I assume he's talking. I can see him moving, but I can't hear the audio. So that is not good. Larry's back on that dial-up connection here. Sorry, Larry. We can't hear you, man. We cannot hear you. Damn, we were doing really good before. Okay, now you're green again, Larry.
Still not getting audio though.
Still not getting audio.
Well, so I'm looking at like the USDA SNAP page where they talk about the things that they do to combat fraud.
Okay.
And so there's a couple things. One is like they audit the people that are receiving the benefits, and they've like the second is they pursue retailer and recipient fraud. And let me just move this over so it's easier for me to read. And like so combating misuse of benefits. So they're going to be like monitoring store and doing sting operations, strengthening the rules and sanctions related to retailers. So like higher penalties for retailers that are found to be breaking the rules, permanently disqualifying stores for trafficking and sanctioning the stores that have violations, keeping the retailers that are problematic from coming back. Because like the biggest thing that you're going to see, the biggest fraud in SNAP is usually going to be like some kind of cash for benefits thing, where the store will give you cash if you or like you say like you buy, let's say you want to buy alcohol, but you can't buy alcohol with SNAP. So what you do is you buy a couple gallons of milk on the SNAP card, and then you return those gallons of milk to the store, and maybe you get 75% of what the milk was. So let's say you bought $20 of milk, and you return and you use the SNAP benefits to pay for that milk. Then you return that milk to the store, get $15 back in cash, and then spend that $15 to buy a 12-pack.
Gotcha. Larry, you want to? Well, you're clear right now. You want to follow up with what you were saying a second ago about what's going on in Texas? We have no audio from you, so that's not good. Well, Larry, just shout something when you clear this audio situation. In the meantime, I want to read comments from Josh Elstein. This is like unions, tons of people, and no one cares. My friend is a nurse and sees tons of waste and carelessness, waiting to age out and doing terrible work. The issue is them getting in trouble and laid off at this point. There's no one to take these jobs. Literally the other day, I heard a nurse at a school cursed out a teacher, walked out, and there's no consequences because they can't fill her job. So even getting the abuse fraudsters is there's more right behind them, just as bad, and they don't have nurses. So,
well, the thing about I disagree with the idea that if you catch some fraudsters, other fraudsters will come to take their place.
Well,
because
fraud is easy, but you have to have that pipeline of incoming people, and it sounds like
but what I'm saying is that if you
pipeline.
change the incentives, you'll change behavior. So right now, whatever fraud that exists because people have the incentive to commit it. If you make the punishment more severe, if you make the oversight higher, then you're going to make the risk of getting caught higher, and the punishment is eventually going to outweigh the benefits that you get. And I don't know what that line is, but people smarter than me could probably be put to work finding that line. And so I do want to talk really quick about, so we talk because we're wait, are we getting audio from Larry now?
No, we got nothing.
Okay, well then I really want to talk about this because lost in all of this is
we got a minute. We got 90 seconds.
Yeah. I'll make this. This is 30 seconds. Is we talk about all these programs that are primarily designed for poor people, and we're harping about fraud and abuse and inefficiency for programs that benefit poor people. However, 2 years ago, when the PPP program was going on, and the beneficiaries of the PPP program were primarily business owners who are wealthier on average than the people that are getting assistance from the programs that we've been talking about tonight. the estimated fraud incidence rate with PPP loans was about 15%. So, and you don't hear people talking too much about the PPP program and its fraud, yet its fraud was as bad or worse than most of the programs that we're talking about. So,
All right. Well, that's it for time. Really good point to end on. Larry, maybe next time we'll do this out of the office. We'll do it in person. We'll grab some drinks there. James, really good point to end on. And on that note, we are out, everyone. Adios.
laters.
See ya.
All right, this is the other end. Thank you for making this far. You made it this far. Please subscribe to the podcast. I'd love to see you seeing more of me. On that note, though, we got another episode to get ready for, and see you next episode.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.